Hello, everyone, and welcome to our conversation around references and citations. This is part of a larger discussion that deals with APA in general, but sometimes this fundamental concept is overlooked. So that's the purpose of this conversation, is to make sure that it's pretty clear what a reference and a citation is. So without further ado, so what is a reference and a citation? We'll go over today what a reference is, some important reminders. We'll talk a little bit about what citations are as well, and then we'll close with your asking you to ask for questions, or if you have them, reaching out. That's what my role here is to answer questions. So jumping in, what is a citation? And a citation is a way of telling the reader exactly what you got the idea from that you're talking about. It's a link to a reference, and this is a key concept. There should be a citation for every reference that's within an APA paper, and vice versa. At least one citation per reference, oftentimes multiple. If you have a citation, you've got to have a reference, what I just said. And if you fail to cite something with the citation, even if you list it as a reference, it's still your opinion. So the way that a reader can tell that a sentence has something to do with a source other than you is through the use of a citation. You cite on the first time you use a source, not every time you use a source, if you're within the same paragraph, so the same thought. So at the point that you're going through a conversation, you've got a paragraph you're working through, which is a single thought related to some idea, and you use a citation, you don't have to cite it again on the second sentence that you use it if it follows the first one. The only time you have to cite it again is if you happen to have introduced a source between the first one and the third one. So a more practical kind of example. This is a citation on the left side, and it's referencing the reference that's on the right side. So this shows you the relationship between the left, where the actual paper is, how it ties into a particular reference inside of a paper. And one of the ways that you can learn a lot about scholarly writing in general is by reading other people's papers. Oftentimes there are some really good ones, and sometimes there are some that aren't so good. But by finding those that are really good, you can definitely learn things in the process. So a little further, what's a reference? And it's basically something that has been cited inside of a paper. It has to have been cited, or it doesn't belong inside of the list of references. It's not something that is a list of all of the stuff that you might have read to prepare yourself to write a paper. Rather, it is a list of those things that were actually utilized during the paper itself. So you're saying where you got an idea from, who it is that supports the opinion that you're stating, so the statement that you're making, rather than it just be an opinion that you have. It is something that others have proven or felt to be true, to the extent that they've been able to get something published that reflects it. And one of the key ideas is to let the reader know where they can go learn more. So if there's something that for some reason engages with them, it's some way that they can go out, take a little look, and read the papers that you read and see if they can reach the same conclusions you did. So some important reminders, and this is a refresher of things that I've previously said. Cite on the first sentence of a source, and only cite again if you're starting either a new paragraph or you've introduced a source before it. So if you cite on every sentence, which some students will do in an effort to avoid plagiarism, you're doing what's called overcitation, and it's actually something that's called out explicitly in the APA 7th edition manual as to something that should be avoided, and primarily because it makes it really hard to read a paper. A paper that has a citation on every sentence, it's almost impractical to get through. You spend all your time trying to figure out what's the citation and what's the paper. So cite on the first use of a source in a paragraph. Only cite it again if you've either started a new paragraph or you've introduced another source after the initial introduction, and you're going back to that original one. Do follow the APA citation guidelines. It's very clear on this topic. Take a look at the section around paraphrasing long passages if you want more guidance, especially if you find yourself citing the same source repeatedly. Don't include a reference that doesn't have a citation. Orphan references, uh, first of all, it's inappropriate. and it goes against the purpose. It's not a list of, hey, here's all the things that you should go read like I read. It's a list of, these are the things that support the points that I'm making inside of this paper. And obviously don't include a citation that doesn't have a reference. Generally speaking, if that occurs, it may be an indication that perhaps the student took that passage from somebody else's paper. It's a very purposeful thing whenever you include your citation, and the procedure is to go through, and after you do the citation, to make sure the reference is there, or better yet, use a tool like EndNote or Zotero that takes care of that for you. And with that, we'll conclude with questions. As always, if you have any questions, do reach out to me. That's what I'm here for. And I hope you enjoy learning more about APA as we move forward.